The galaxy was quiet, too quiet. For 200 years, the Galactic Council had ruled the stars with the promise of peace. Countless species, each older and prouder than the next, sat beneath its shining banner, the emblem of unity. They called it the Order. But beneath that peace, the air was thin and brittle, like glass about to crack. Every empire feared the others. Every world whispered of betrayal. And in that fragile silence stood humanity, young, reckless, and terrifyingly determined. When they first arrived among the stars, the Council laughed. Humans had come in ships held together by iron, dreams, and desperation. They had no ancient wisdom, no telepathic counsels, no godlike weapons. What they had was something different: discipline, courage, and an obsession with order. So when the Council sought volunteers to enforce its laws across the distant borders, to keep the peace where no one else dared, it was humanity that stepped forward. They called them the Peacekeepers. At first, the galaxy saw them as servants, a disposable force to clean up after greater powers, but the humans didn't mind. They built fleets. They trained soldiers. They learned every alien language and every form of war known to the stars. And they waited. Captain Myra Solace watched the blue shimmer of Orthia Prime spin below her from the bridge of the UNS Resolute. Her eyes were cold, her face still, but her crew knew the tension running beneath her calm. Out there, beyond the trade lanes, two empires, the SHK Dominion and the Kelt Compact, were tearing each other apart. Humanity had been sent to keep the peace. Peace, she whispered to herself, the word heavy and bitter. Peace among liars. Her communications officer turned. Captain, SHK ships have crossed into the exclusion zone. Civilian transports caught in the crossfire. Myra's jaw clenched. The Council had ordered neutrality. Do not interfere, do not fire, do not think without permission. But her orders as a human, her oath, was to protect the innocent. Open a channel to the SHK flagship, she said. Static, no reply. Then a bright flash on the main screen. A SHK dreadnought had fired. The beam lanced through a convoy of merchant ships, vaporizing 1,000 civilians before they could scream. The bridge fell silent. Only the hum of the engines and the slow, rising breath of anger filled the air. Lieutenant Arjun's voice trembled. Orders, Captain. Mara closed her eyes. She saw the Council chamber, alien faces twisting in mock sympathy, their voices dripping with arrogance. She remembered how they'd told her humans were too emotional, too impulsive, that they would never understand order. But order was meaningless without justice. She opened her eyes. Lock railguns, target that dreadnought. Captain, Council Protocol Forb. Lock the target. The command echoed through the ship. The Resolute's guns swiveled into place, the sound of metal and power humming like thunder. Fire! The stars screamed. 3 tungsten slugs shot out faster than thought. They tore through the dreadnought's shields, armor, and reactor in a single breath. The alien warship split apart, a blinding burst of light fatting into debris. The bridge was silent again. Mara stood, her hands trembling slightly. Signal the Council. Tell them the Peacekeepers did their duty. The news spread through the galaxy in hours. The humans had fired without permission. The Council's Peacekeepers had killed a member world's flagship. The SHK called it murder. The Kelt called it salvation. The Council called it treason. Within days, protests filled the central worlds. Alien senators demanded humanity be stripped of their fleets. The Peacekeeper Corps was suspended, and from every broadcast tower in Sol space the message came. Captain Myra Solace is to be arrested for war crimes. But humanity refused. The United Earth Directorate stood before the Council and said 5 simple words. We do not abandon our own. And with that, they recalled every Peacekeeper fleet from the frontier. It was a decision that changed the stars forever. The first alien to understand what was coming was not a general or a senator. It was an old merchant, drifting through the void on a slow freighter near the rim. He watched as human ships began to vanish from the patrol lanes, the once ever-present blue insignias of peace no longer lighting up his scanners. Then he saw something else. Massive carriers black as night sliding through deep space. No transponders, no Council markings. Warships. He whispered a prayer in his native tongue, though he did not know to whom. Far away on Earth, the Directorate met in secret. The holographic room was filled with admirals, diplomats, and soldiers. At the head of the table stood Admiral Harlow, the architect of the Peacekeeper fleets. "They think we're weak," he said, his voice low, carrying the weight of generations. "They think we obey because we are afraid, but peace is not submission. Peace is the discipline to hold your sword until it's needed." "And now," asked one of the generals. Harlow's eyes hardened. "Now we remind them what happens when peacekeepers are betrayed." Out among the stars, alien empires watched and waited. The SHK Dominion prepared fleets. They laughed in their war halls, convinced humanity's time was over. What could a young species do against the might of the galaxy? But those who remembered the first human wars, the battles fought not for conquest, but for survival, knew better. They remembered that humanity had come from a world that burned itself to ash and still rebuilt. They remembered the old saying whispered, even among alien traitors: "Do not mistake the silence of Earth for surrender." On the Resolute, Mara stood before her crew. They had been branded criminals. Their fleet was being hunted by the very council they had served. But her people did not fear. They had seen the truth, the hypocrisy behind the peace, the rot beneath the order. Mara looked out into the endless black, where distant stars flickered like embers. "We kept their peace," she said softly. "Now we'll survive our own war." Outside, the engines of the Resolute flared to life. The ship turned from the Galactic Center and began its long journey home. Behind it, in the wake of that silent flight, the galaxy began to fracture. Whispers turned to accusations turned to threats. And in the cold dark beyond Orthia Prime, where debris from the SHK dreadnought still drifted, the first spark of war flickered to life, unseen, unstoppable. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. For the peace was over, and humanity had just taken off its chains. The fires over Orthia Prime burned for 7 days. From orbit, the one-screen world looked scarred and bruised, dotted with craters that glowed red against the dark. The peace had been shattered, the calm of the galaxy broken in one violent moment, one decision that humanity refused to regret. Captain Mara Salas stood at the viewport of the UNS Resolute, her hands clasped behind her back. Her reflection stared back at her, hard and weary. She had replayed that moment 100 times, the flash of the SHK dreadnought, the screams from the convoy, the words she'd spoken that couldn't be unsaid. Fire. It had been the right choice. She knew it. Every soul on her ship knew it. But the Council didn't care about right, only about control. Her first officer, Lieutenant Arjun, approached quietly. "The Council has issued a formal order for your surrender, Captain. They're sending envoys to demand custody." Mara didn't turn, and Earth. "They've recalled every Peacekeeper fleet. All of them. They refuse to comply." For a long moment, she said nothing. Outside, the shattered remains of the SHK ships drifted through space, silent witnesses to the end of the old peace. Finally, she spoke. "Then the galaxy will burn." The news spread faster than light. Every system, every trade network, every holonet feed carried the same words. "Human PACKEPRS attack SHK dreadnought. Thousands dead. War imminent." Alien worlds erupted in panic. Some demanded vengeance. Others demanded caution. The Council called an emergency summit, their great chamber filled with the shouts of 100 voices. "The humans must be restrained," barked Chancellor Vorth of the SHK Dominion, his mandibles clicking in fury. "They are primitives playing with weapons they cannot control." "Their captain acted alone," countered the Celt representative, his scales shimmering nervously. "If the Council had intervened sooner, none of this would have happened." At the head of the table sat High Arbiter Velra, her eyes closed as chaos echoed around her. "Enough," she finally said. "We will demand reparations. We will order the humans to disarm their fleets. If they refuse, we will enforce it." But deep inside, Velra felt something she hadn't felt in centuries: fear. Humanity had always been obedient, disciplined, silent. They had followed every order, even when it cost them lives, and now they had broken that silence. When silence breaks, it does not whisper, it roars. On the outer rim, the SHK Dominion prepared for war. Massive shipyards came alive, berthing dreadnoughts and cruisers by the hundreds. The SHK were old, one of the first to conquer the stars. They believed in domination through strength, and to them, humanity was a child who had struck its elder. They would make an example of Earth. Their High General, Corthel, stood before his fleet as it assembled, over 1,000 warships armed with plasma lances and antimatter torpedoes. His command echoed through the fleetnet. Humanity believes itself powerful. They mistake mercy for weakness. We will show them their place. We will burn their colonies and scatter their fleets to dust. Let the stars remember who rules the void. The fleet departed for the human colonies along the frontier. They expected an easy victory. They expected fear. They did not expect silence. New Carthage, a young world on the edge of human space, was the first target. Its skies were calm. Its people went about their lives unaware that doom was approaching. Then one by one, the stars vanished. The SHK fleet had arrived. "Begin planetary bombardment," ordered General Corthel. "No survivors." His command ship's cannons charged, and then something strange happened. The sensors began to flicker. One by one, the SHK ships lost contact with their scouts. Space distorted, light bending in unnatural arcs. From behind the moon, shadows moved. And then the shadows opened fire. The Solgard Armada revealed itself, massive human warships painted black, their hulls cold and jagged like obsidian. They had no council insignias, no peacekeeping banners. Only a single emblem, a white circle with a single blue line through it, glowing faintly like an eye staring into eternity. The Resolute led the charge. "Target their flagships," Mara ordered, her voice calm but sharp. "No warnings." Her fleet obeyed. Railguns thundered, their slugs invisible, unstoppable. Kinetic impacts ripped through SHK vessels before their shields even registered the strike. Entire wings of enemy cruisers shattered, metal and fire spreading like dust in the dark. The SHK fired back, plasma bolts cutting across the void, but the human ships moved with impossible precision, guided by AI reflexes and human will. Drones poured out of their hangars, thousands of them, small and fast, darting between enemy ships like swarms of angry hornets. The first wave of SHK was gone in minutes. Corthel's voice crackled over the fleet channel. "Impossible, how are they?" A new voice cut him off, cold and human. "You wanted war, you found it." Then came the second volley. Hours later, silence returned to the New Carthage system. Only wreckage remained of broken SHK vessels drifting through the void. Of the 1,000 ships that had entered the system, fewer than 50 escaped. The humans didn't chase them. They didn't need to. The message had been sent. On the bridge of the Resolute, Mara stood with her crew. The light from the planet below painted her face pale and ghost-like. Arjun whispered, "We've done it, Captain. They'll never underestimate us again." Mara's gaze didn't leave the window. "No," she said quietly. "They'll fear us now, and fear is worse than hate." When the survivors limped back to SHK space, the galaxy listened. They spoke of weapons that struck faster than light, of invisible fleets hidden behind shadows, of humans who fought like machines and killed without hesitation. The Council demanded explanations. The Directorate gave none. They simply issued a statement. "The Solgard defends humanity. If you come for us, you will not return." In the weeks that followed, entire empires began to choose sides. Some swore loyalty to the humans out of fear. Others prepared for retaliation. The council chambers filled with threats and secrets, alliances and betrayals. But for the first time in living memory, one truth united them all: the understanding that the balance of power was broken. The old order had fallen, and in its place stood humanity, the former peacekeepers, the enforcers turned avengers. They had shown the galaxy their strength, not with words but with action. And deep within every alien heart, even those who hated them, a single thought took root. What if they turned that strength on us? Back aboard the Resolute, Captain Mara Salas sat alone in her quarters. Her hands trembled slightly as she stared at the data feed, casualty numbers, transmissions, reports of victory. It was supposed to feel like justice. Instead, it felt like the end of something sacred. The peace they had bled to protect was gone. And though she knew the galaxy had forced their hand, she couldn't shake the image of that first blast, the dreadnought exploding in light, the scream of the innocent turned into a roar of vengeance. Outside her window, the stars shimmered cold and distant. They looked the same as they always had. But she knew the truth. The stars would never look peaceful again. The SH-car Dominion was gone. It happened so fast that the galaxy didn't believe it at first. 1,000 warships, a proud empire that had stood for 10,000 years, erased in 3 hours. The stars over their homeworld were filled with drifting ash and twisted metal, and their last distress call had ended mid-scream. The galaxy stared into the silence that followed and understood, for the first time, what humanity truly was. Not saviors, not servants, not peacekeepers. A storm. In the heart of the Galactic Council chamber, chaos reigned. Senators shouted over one another, voices cracking with fear and rage. The once proud halls that had symbolized unity now echoed with panic. "They destroyed the Dominion," shouted the representative from the Varn Collective, his tendrils thrashing. "A council member world, they could do the same to any of us." "They were provoked," countered a Celt diplomat. "The SH car attacked first. What did you expect them to do, die quietly?" "They used weapons we have never seen before," hissed the Varn. "Weapons that break the laws of physics. That is not defense, it's domination." At the center of the chamber, High Arbiter Velra sat motionless. Her gaze was fixed on the live holofeed, the remains of the SH car homeworld slowly rotating in orbit, surrounded by the cold gleam of human ships. No one spoke of punishment now. No one dared. They all knew it. The humans had crossed a line that could never be undone. And the Council, once the master of order, was now powerless to stop them. On the bridge of the UNS Resolute, Captain Mara Sala stood in silence as the last SH car beacon flickered out. Around her, the crew worked in near wordlessness, their faces pale, their eyes hollow. The battle had been too easy, too one-sided. Humanity's fleets had moved like a living machine, precise and unstoppable. The Solgard Armada, the fleet humanity had built in secret, hidden even from the Council, had been unleashed. She could still hear Admiral Harlow's voice from the last transmission before the battle began. "Peace is over, Mara. The Council wanted to see what happens when we stop holding back, show them." And she had. Now she wished she hadn't. Lieutenant Arjun approached her cautiously. "Orders from Earth, Captain. We're to regroup near the Vega relay. No further strikes unless provoked." "Unless provoked," she repeated softly. "That's what they always say before another war starts." He hesitated. "We didn't start this war, ma'am." Myra looked out the viewport, watching debris glint in the starlight. "No," she said, "but we'll finish it." Across the galaxy, the whispers began. Humanity's name spread like a curse. Some called them angels of vengeance, others demons of the void. On backwater moons and border colonies, traders spoke in hushed voices of black ships that appeared from the dark, of railguns that split suns, of captains who never smiled. Children from other species were told bedtime warnings. Stay quiet, or the humans will come. And yet, beneath the fear, something else began to grow: respect. 1,000 years of alien arrogance had vanished in the face of human will. The oldest empires, once confident in their superiority, now trembled at the thought of those soft-skinned primates from the blue world called Earth. For the first time, the galaxy understood that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't its ships or guns. It was its resolve. The Council tried to recover. They called for unity, for diplomacy, for restraint. They sent envoys to Earth, none returned. Then they sent fleets. The Varn Collective, the Thal Hegemony, and the Koran clans formed a temporary alliance. They called it the Coalition for Stability. A grand title meant to hide what it really was: fear dressed as courage. 10,000 ships gathered along the Orion Corridor, forming the largest armada in history. They believed humanity could be cornered, contained. They believed they could crush Earth with sheer numbers. They didn't understand that humanity had been preparing for this moment since the day it joined the stars. Admiral Harlow stood aboard the UNS Valiant, the command ship of the Solgard. He was an old man, his hair silver, his eyes sharp and haunted. Before him stretched the holographic map of the galaxy, filled with red enemy markers closing in from all directions. To anyone else it looked hopeless. To him it looked like opportunity. He turned to his fleet commanders. "They think they're coming to end us. Let them come." "What's the plan, sir?" asked one of the captains. He smiled faintly, not the smile of joy, but of grim certainty. "We've been their peacekeepers. We've studied every tactic, every weakness, every blind spot in their fleets. They taught us how to fight them, and now we'll show them what they taught us." the war rooms filled with murmurs of awe and fear. As the alien coalition advanced toward Sol's space, they found human defenses strangely quiet. No patrols, no resistance. Just empty darkness. They entered the system with confidence, and then the sky broke apart. Hundreds of human stealth ships uncloaked from solar shadow, their hulls glimmering like liquid metal. The Valiant's voice echoed across every frequency. "You stand before Earth, you are not welcome." The aliens barely had time to respond before the first wave hit. Railguns thundered like the heartbeat of a god. Drones swarmed in shimmering clouds, their movements flawless, terrifying. Every missile, every cannon, every ship moved as one, guided by human will and machine precision. The alien fleet shattered. Their formation dissolved under the relentless barrage. Ships exploded silently, fire blooming like crimson flowers in the void. In less than an hour, half the coalition was gone. Those who tried to flee found their paths blocked by human carrier groups. They begged for retreat, for mercy, for surrender. There was no answer, only silence. In the command room of the Valiant, Harlow watched as the last enemy flagship imploded under its own core collapse. "Transmission from the Council," a lieutenant said. "They're demanding a ceasefire." Harlow didn't even look up. "Tell them they already have one." He turned away from the display. His reflection in the viewport looked tired, almost broken. "Sir," the lieutenant whispered, "what now?" Harlow's voice was soft. "Now they remember. Every world, every empire, every species, they remember what happens when humanity stops being afraid." When the smoke cleared, the Orion corridor was silent. Wreckage floated where fleets once stood. The stars themselves seemed dimmer, as if mourning the dead. The Council declared a galactic day of mourning. Earth declared victory. And somewhere, far from both, Captain Mara Salas and her crew drifted in the darkness aboard the Resolute, listening to the quiet hum of their engines. Arjun broke the silence. "We've won again, Captain." She didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the stars ahead, cold, endless, unfeeling. "Victory," she said at last, her voice barely a whisper. "That's what they call it when no one's left to fight back." But the galaxy would remember. They would remember the day humanity stood alone against 10,000 ships. They would remember how the Peacekeepers became something else. Not protectors, not soldiers, but executioners of their own making. And they would remember this truth, whispered in every shadow and every council hall. The humans had come in peace. But peace had never been their nature. The council chambers had never been so loud. For 1,000 years, the Great Hall of Vekara Prime had been the center of galactic unity. Its marble floors and golden light once symbolized peace. Now it was filled with chaos, shouting voices, trembling hands, and the sound of fear breaking through pride. The holographic table in the center flickered with the latest images from the Orion corridor, drifting hulks of warships, broken fleets, thousands of dead. Humanity had done this. Humanity, the youngest, smallest, most underestimated race in the stars, had annihilated the largest coalition the galaxy had ever assembled. 10,000 ships, whispered Counselor Serval of the Varn Collective. 10,000 gone, how can they, how dare they? They warned us, said another, her tone flat, her eyes wide. They told us to stay out of Sol's space. The room erupted again. The humans are monsters. They're defenders. They're dangerous. They're necessary. No one listened to anyone else. The Council, the shining symbol of interstellar order, was collapsing under its own fear. At the head of the table, High Arbiter Velra sat in silence. Her claws pressed against the armrest so tightly that blood trickled down her palm. She had ruled through 1,000 crises, but never this. The galaxy had changed overnight, and no one could control humanity anymore. Beyond the council chambers, across 100 systems, chaos spread like wildfire. Old rivalries resurfaced. Empires began to move fleets not against the humans, but against each other. The Varn Collective withdrew from council space entirely, claiming the humans had poisoned the galactic order. The Kelt Compact demanded neutrality, fearing the wrath of the Solguard. Dozens of smaller species fled their colonies, abandoning trade routes that had thrived for centuries. For the first time in history, the Council's fleets received no obedience. Its authority was gone. And in the silence left behind, a new order began to form, one built not on diplomacy, but on fear of Earth. In a quiet chamber aboard the human flagship UNS Valiant, Admiral Harlow stood before a projection of the shattered Council network. One by one, their communications had gone dark, either abandoned or destroyed. He didn't smile, he didn't celebrate. He simply watched. His aide entered holding a datapad. "Sir, messages from the outer colonies. They're being contacted by several alien species. Some are offering alliances, others are begging for protection." "Protection," Harlow repeated. "That's what they called it when we joined their council. Funny how quickly words change meaning." "Should we respond, sir?" The Admiral turned, his face unreadable. "Tell them the Solguard doesn't beg and it doesn't bargain. If they want protection, they follow our law, no exceptions." The aide hesitated. "That sounds like Empire," Harlow finished. "Perhaps, but maybe that's what peace needs to survive." On Vikara Prime, the Council struggled to stay alive. Every hour brought new crises, border wars, pirate uprisings, rebellions. The order was dying and everyone knew it. High Arbiter Velra called for an emergency broadcast, a message to every world in the galaxy. When the signal went live, she stood before the camera, her eyes tired but steady. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began, her voice echoing across 1,000 systems. "We face our darkest hour. The Peacekeepers, once servants of the Council, have become a force beyond control. Humanity claims to seek stability, but their actions threaten everything we have built." She paused, looking directly into the lens. "We must not let fear guide us. We must unite. If we fall into division, if we let vengeance rule, then the order will not merely collapse, it will vanish forever." Her speech ended in silence. But far away, in shadowed rooms and military bunkers, leaders of alien worlds whispered their answers. It was already too late. On Mars, the United Earth Directorate convened for the first time since the war began. The room was dimly lit, guarded by soldiers in black armor bearing the Solguard emblem. "We hold the skis," said one general proudly. "The Council is finished. Their fleets are shattered, their worlds divided. Humanity has finally earned its place." Admiral Harlow, watching through a secure feed, said nothing. His expression didn't change. But across the table, Director Elena Voss, Earth's political leader, leaned forward. Her voice was cold. "A place among the stars, yes, but not the one we imagined." The general frowned. "We've won, Madam Director." She met his gaze. "No, we've survived, that's not the same thing." The room fell silent. Outside the window, Mars glowed red against the darkness. Back on the UNS Resolute, Captain Mara Solis listened to the Council broadcast. Her crew gathered around her, silent as the Arbiter's words faded into static. Lieutenant Arjun spoke softly. "They sound desperate." "They are," Myra said. "The order's gone. They'll turn on each other now, and when they're done, they'll come for us again." She stood and walked to the viewport. Stars glimmered beyond, peaceful and indifferent. "Captain," Arjun said, "what happens when the war ends?" Mara gave a sad smile. "Wars like this never end, they just change names." Weeks later, the inevitable happened. The Varn Collective launched a defensive strike on a neighboring empire, claiming to prevent human expansion. The Thal hegemony retaliated, blaming humanity for the collapse of trade. In the chaos, pirate clans and rogue fleets rose up, taking advantage of the power vacuum. Entire sectors burned. The galaxy had become what it once feared most, a battlefield. And every empire blamed humanity. The Council called for one last meeting. Only a handful of delegates arrived. The rest sent empty chairs, symbolic protests that meant nothing anymore. Velra stood before them, her voice breaking. "We cannot stop them. The humans do not answer to us. Their fleets grow stronger each day. The others see it too, some already swear loyalty to Earth. If this continues, the Council will fall completely." One delegate leaned forward. "Then we destroy them." Velra froze. "Destroy them." "We unite what remains of our fleets," the delegate said. "Not to defend, but to strike, before they grow too strong, before they become gods." A heavy silence followed. Then slowly, one by one, the others nodded. It was decided. The last act of the Galactic Council would be war. When the first human scout ships detected the enemy fleets massing along the rim, Admiral Harlow was not surprised. He had been expecting it. "Send word to all command stations," he ordered. "Activate the Iron Sky Protocol." The officers in the room stiffened. The Iron Sky was the last defense, the one humanity swore would never be used. It meant war on a scale the galaxy had never seen. Harlow turned toward the viewing screen, watching the distant shimmer of Earth rise above its sun. "They think we're monsters," he whispered. "Let's make sure they never forget why." In that moment across the stars, the last light of peace flickered out. The Council had fractured. The galaxy had chosen its sides. And humanity, once the servant of order, had become its master. The stars over Sol burned brighter than ever that day. They shimmered above fleets so vast that entire constellations seemed to vanish behind them. The humans were ready. For weeks, the Solgard Armada had been assembling in silence, warships the size of cities, carriers that could launch 1,000 fighters at once, and dreadnoughts whose cannons could pierce moons. Around Earth, Mars, and Titan, they formed a web of power so dense that even light seemed to hesitate before passing through. This was Operation Iron Sky, humanity's final defense, their declaration that no one would ever again threaten their home. Admiral Harlow stood on the bridge of the UNS Valiant, watching the endless lines of ships. His face was calm, his voice steady, but inside, the weight of what was coming pressed down like gravity itself. "Enemy fleets approaching the heliopause," said the sensor officer. "Multiple signatures, council banners, coalition ships, they're bringing everything." Harlow nodded. "Let them come." The officers around him exchanged nervous glances. The last war had ended in slaughter for the aliens. But this time, the Council was desperate. They had called upon every remaining fleet, every weapon, every resource. The galaxy's finest armada was coming for humanity's heart. They called it the final cleansing. Humanity called it suicide. In the cold dark beyond Pluto, the enemy arrived. 10,000 ships, glittering titans of steel and plasma, entered Sol's space. Their banners bore the colors of 14 species, united by fear and vengeance. At their head was High Marshal Kevar of the Thal hegemony, a creature older than Earth's continents, who believed victory was already his. "Transmit message to human command," he said, his voice a low rumble. "This is your last chance. Surrender your weapons, submit to the Council's authority. Refuse and Earth will burn." The message crossed the void, reaching the Valiant. Harlow listened to it once, then twice. Then he smiled a quiet, tired smile. "Reply," he said, "channel open." "This is Admiral Harlow, United Earth Directorate. You came here seeking justice. You will find none. You came here seeking war. You will find the end of it." The transmission cut. Silence filled the void. Then humanity moved. The first wave struck like thunder. Thousands of drones burst from the shadows of Neptune, silent and invisible until the moment they fired. Railgun slugs tore through the enemy's front lines, ripping apart cruisers before they could even raise their shields. The alien armada reeled, scattering into defensive formations. But before they could regroup, Earth's main fleet emerged from behind the sun, a vast wall of black metal that glowed with blue fury. The Solgard had arrived. From the bridge of his flagship, Harlow gave the order that would be remembered for millennia. "Execute Iron Sky." The void exploded. Dozens of orbital fortresses around Earth came online, their weapons linking into a single unified grid. Invisible lines of energy connected ship to ship, station to station, until the entire human fleet became one living organism of war. Mass accelerators fired from Mars, their projectiles guided by AI through gravitational slingshot maneuvers. The shots ripped through space at a fraction of light speed, pure, unstoppable death. Every missile was a storm, every drone a blade, every ship a fortress. The aliens fought back. Their plasma lances and fusion cannons lit up the void, melting human ships by the hundreds. The battlefield became a burning sea of wreckage. But the humans didn't retreat. They never retreated. For every ship lost, 2 more appeared from stealth fields. For every fighter shot down, 10 more took its place. "Admiral," shouted the comms officer, "they're pushing toward Luna." Harlow turned sharply. "Then we hold Luna." "But sir, we hold everything." His voice roared across every channel. carried through the chaos to every captain, every pilot, every soldier. They want our surrender, give them extinction instead. On the surface of Luna, human soldiers fought in silence, watching the battle unfold across the black sky. The stars flashed with bursts of fire and light, like dying suns. Captain Mara Salas and the UNS Resolute were in the thick of it, flying alongside the remains of her Peacekeeper fleet. Her ship trembled under the pressure of combat, hull glowing from near-constant impacts. "Shields at 20%, Arjun shouted. "Keep firing," Mara ordered. A plasma bolt hit them broadside, throwing her against the console. The bridge filled with smoke, alarms screaming, but she forced herself up, blood running down her temple. "Target their command ship," she said, voice hoarse. "Lock on and fire everything we have left." Her gunner hesitated. "Captain, that's suicide." "So is surrender." The Resolute's cannons glowed white-hot as they charged. Every remaining railgun, missile, and plasma coil fired at once, a blinding storm that punched through the void and slammed into the Thal flagship. It didn't just explode, it vanished, torn apart atom by atom. The Resolute drifted silently afterward, her hull cracked, her crew cheering weakly. Mara smiled faintly. "Peacekeeper duty complete," she whispered before darkness took her. The battle raged for 12 hours, then 16, then 20. By the time it ended, the alien armada was gone. Entire species had lost their fleets in a single day. Wreckage drifted through Sol's space like ghostly reminders of the war that should never have happened. The Solguard had held. Earth was still standing, and the galaxy, for the first time, was silent. In the aftermath, the Council tried to speak again, but their signals went unanswered. Their envoys were turned away. Their words meant nothing. Admiral Harlow watched the last of the alien wrecks burn in the sun's corona. Around him, officers whispered of victory, of glory, of revenge satisfied. But he didn't feel triumph, only the quiet weight of inevitability. He turned to his crew. "Send word to all fleets, full withdrawal to defensive positions, no more attacks." "Sir, we've made our point." He walked to the viewport, looking down at Earth, small, fragile, perfect. "They wanted to know what happens when humanity stands alone," he said softly. "Now they know." Across the galaxy, silence turned to dread. Alien leaders stared at the reports in disbelief. Entire fleets gone, their generals dead, their empires crippled. And everywhere one message was whispered, repeated like prayer, like warning. "Do not go to Sol, do not anger the humans." The legend of Iron Sky spread faster than light. No one dared challenge Earth again. But humanity's victory came at a price. Countless dead, burned worlds, and a peace built not on trust but on fear. And as the Solguard rebuilt in the quiet black of space, even Harlow wondered if they had won anything at all. Because when the stars finally stopped burning, one truth remained. Peace was gone, and in its place stood humanity, cold, watchful, and unchallenged. The war was over, but the stars were still burning. All across the galaxy, worlds lay in ruins. Trade routes were shattered. Empires that had stood for millennia drifted in silence. The old council, once the voice of order, was gone, its great halls on Vekara Prime now empty, its banners torn and forgotten. And in the center of that broken galaxy, humanity stood alone. In orbit around Earth, the UNS Valiant floated above the blue glow of the planet it had fought to protect. The ship bore scars, whole sections burned away, hull plates warped and twisted, but it still flew, proud and defiant. Admiral Harlow stood by the window, staring down at Earth. His reflection looked hollow. His eyes were rimmed with exhaustion, the kind that came not from lack of sleep, but from carrying the weight of too many ghosts. Behind him, his aide entered quietly. "Sir, the last of the Council's representatives have sent their plea. They want negotiations. They're offering unconditional surrender." Harlow didn't move, and their fleets. "Gone," the aide said. "Their ships have either been destroyed or deactivated. There's no one left to fight." The Admiral's voice was soft but cold. "No one left to fight," he repeated, "but still plenty left to remember." He turned at last, his uniform dark and heavy with dust and blood. "Prepare a transmission," he said. "I'll speak to the galaxy myself." Across 1,000 systems, Across every screen, every radio wave, every broadcast channel, the image appeared. Admiral Harlow stood beneath the flag of Earth, a white circle, a single blue line through its center, and spoke. "To every world that can still hear me," he said, his voice even and unshaken, "this war is over." He paused, letting silence carry the weight of his words. "You called us peacekeepers once. You gave us your laws, your orders, your wars. We obeyed. We fought for your peace, not ours. But when the moment came, when one of your empires murdered innocents and we acted to stop it, you turned on us. You called us monsters." He looked down, his hands curling into fists. "You wanted to see our strength. You have seen it. You wanted to test our resolve. You have felt it. This war was your doing, but the blood is on all of us. Every star that went dark, every world that fell, every voice that went silent." His gaze lifted again, hard and steady. "Humanity does not seek conquest. We do not seek to rule, but we will never again bow. If you raise a fleet against us, we will destroy it. If you send soldiers against our worlds, we will burn your armies from orbit. You will find no mercy here, only memory. From this day forward, the Solguard will serve not as peacekeepers, but as guardians. Those who live by war will fear us. Those who seek peace will find it beneath our protection." He leaned forward, eyes like steel. "The age of the Council is over. The age of humanity has begun." The transmission ended, and the galaxy trembled. The message spread faster than light. On every world, the same image played: Harlow's face, his voice, his words echoing in languages translated by trembling diplomats. Some cheered, some wept, most watched in silence, for they all understood what his message truly meant. The war was over, yes, but peace would no longer be chosen, it would be enforced. On Vikara Prime, the last surviving council members gathered in their shattered hall. Their once golden chamber was cracked and broken, lit only by the dull glow of dying power cells. High Arbiter Velra stood before them, her voice hollow. "He means to rule by fear," she said. "The humans will not stop. They will rebuild their fleets, and one day they will come for us all." One of the younger diplomats spoke, trembling. "Then what do we do?" Velra looked toward the dark sky visible through the fractured dome. "We survive," she whispered. "That's all we can do now." Meanwhile, far from Earth, aboard the UNS Resolute, Captain Mara Solace opened her eyes for the first time in weeks. The medbay was quiet. The ship had survived, but barely. Half her crew was gone. The rest moved like ghosts, silent and broken. Arjun stood at her bedside, a tired smile on his face. "You made it, Captain." She looked around slowly. "The war." "It's over," he said. "We won." Mara's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Won," she repeated softly. "I wonder what that word means anymore." She sat up with effort, looking through the small viewport beside her bed. The stars were still there, cold, beautiful, eternal, but something in them had changed. They seemed more distant now, less alive. "The galaxy's afraid of us," Arjun said quietly. "We're the peace now." Mara closed her eyes. "No," she whispered, "we're the silence that comes after." Months passed. The galaxy rebuilt itself carefully and quietly. The Varn Collective signed a treaty recognizing human authority over Council space. The Thal hegemony retreated into isolation. Smaller worlds sent tribute to Earth, not as enemies, but as subjects seeking protection. And so, without ever declaring it, humanity became what it had once sworn never to be: an empire. In the Sol system, massive orbital shipyards hummed with life. The Solguard fleet grew larger every day, but their ships were no longer marked with the peacekeeper insignia of old. Now they bore only the new symbol, a single white eye over a black star. The message was clear: humanity watched everything. Admiral Harlow often visited those shipyards in silence. He spoke little now, and when he did, it was only to give orders. The victory had changed him. The man who had once fought to protect peace had become the architect of power. One evening, standing alone before the observation deck, he whispered to the stars. "We became the thing we were meant to stop." He knew no one would hear him. And yet, far beyond the borders of human space, whispers began to spread again. There were rumors of new powers rising, of hidden worlds rebuilding their fleets, of rebels who refused to live under human rule. But those were just whispers, quiet and distant, because no one dared to speak them loudly. Not while the Solgard still watched the stars. On her dying world, High Arbiter Velra sent one final message before her power failed. It was short and simple, carried across the void to whoever might be listening. We tried to control them, we failed. Remember this, humanity is not evil, but they are what peace becomes when peace is betrayed. And across the galaxy, the people remembered. They remembered the wars, the fire, the silence that followed. They remembered the humans, their eyes filled with sorrow and rage, their ships gliding like shadows across the void. No one spoke against them, no one challenged them, because everyone knew what would happen if they did. The stars still burned, but they no longer sang. For peace had returned to the galaxy, cold, perfect, and absolute. The kind of peace only humanity could make. 100 years had passed since the war. The galaxy had changed. The council was gone, its monuments buried under the dust of forgotten worlds. The empires that once ruled the stars now bent their knees to one power, Earth. Humanity had not only survived, it had risen to command the stars. Every major system now answered to the Directorate of Sol. Human warships patrolled every trade lane. Their banners hung above every world once loyal to the old council. The peace they promised was real, but it was the kind of peace that came from fear. They called it the Empire of Silence. In the dark of space, a patrol ship drifted past a ruined planet. Its surface was cracked and lifeless, scorched long ago during the final days of the war. The insignia of the Solgard, the white eye over the black star, gleamed on the ship's hull. Inside, the crew worked in silence. They didn't need words anymore. Orders came through neural links, emotions shared faster than speech. Humanity had perfected war, then made peace through that same precision. Captain Ilya Wren looked out through the viewport, his face calm but his thoughts heavy. He was born decades after the war. He had never seen battle, only heard stories. To him, the tales of Admiral Harlow and Captain Solace were legends told to children. But he often wondered if those legends had been victories or warnings. On Earth, the capital city stretched across continents, gleaming towers of glass and light, connected by orbital elevators that reached into the heavens. The Directorate ruled from there, and its leader, Grand Marshal Elena Voss, the last living official of the old Directorate, had become something close to myth. She stood in her office, high above the clouds, watching the sun rise over the Atlantic spire. Her hair was silver now, her face lined with age, but her eyes remained sharp, the eyes of someone who had seen empires fall. Behind her, an aide approached. Grand Marshal, the governors of the Varn and Thal sectors have sent reports. Rebellions are rising again, small ones but spreading fast. Voss didn't turn. How many worlds? 11 confirmed, possibly more. She sighed softly. It begins again. Shall we deploy the fleet? She looked out the window at the distant stars. Not yet. Send the Peacekeepers first. The aide hesitated. With respect, ma'am, there are no more Peacekeepers. Voss smiled faintly. Then it's time to make them again. The galaxy's rebellion started small, workers refusing taxes, colonies rejecting human governors, pirates attacking Solgard patrols. But the spark spread. In the shadows of old council worlds, the survivors of alien empires whispered of vengeance. They spoke the old names, Shkar, Varn, Thal, and remembered what humanity had done to them. Soon the whispers became a flame. World by world, fleets began to rise. Not large fleets, not yet, but enough to send a message. For the first time in a century, someone dared to defy the humans. When the first rebellion broke out, it was crushed within hours. The Solgard's response was swift, brutal, and absolute. Over the skis of Juno Prime, human dreadnoughts unleashed orbital bombardment. The planet's oceans boiled. Its cities turned to ash. The rebellion ended before it began. But the message that followed echoed through the void. Obedience is peace, defiance is silence. Across the stars, people began to fear again. Not the Council, not each other. They feared Earth. But in that fear, something new was born, resentment. Admiral Harlow was long dead, but his name was spoken like a curse among alien rebels. In the underground networks of forgotten worlds, secret leaders quoted his final transmission. Peace is the shadow of power. They twisted it, made it their anthem. And so the reborn council was formed, a secret alliance of alien worlds united by one goal, to free the galaxy from human control. They hid in the dark, rebuilding old fleets, forging new weapons from human wreckage. They waited for the day they could strike. Captain Ilya Wren received orders to patrol the border of the Varn Nebula. His crew didn't know why the region had gone dark, but they followed the command without question. When they arrived, the scanners went dead. Communications vanished. Then, one by one, the stars around them blinked out. Wren frowned. Something's wrong, all systems offline. Everything, his officer said. We're blind. The next moment, the blackness came alive. Hundreds of alien ships emerged from the shadows, their hulls painted with ancient symbols, the emblems of the long-dead council. The reborn had risen. Transmit identification, Wren ordered. We're Solgard vessels you're in violation of. A beam of light split the darkness, striking his ship's side. The hull screamed as metal tore apart. The battle was over before it began. The reborn had made their move. News of the attack reached Earth within hours. Entire fleets had vanished. Dozens of human outposts were gone. Grand Marshal Voss stood before the War Council, her voice steady. They think we've grown weak, she said. They think time has softened us. Let them learn the truth. She turned to the admirals. Prepare the Solgard Armada, every ship, every world. If they want war, we will give them the kind only humans can make. The Second Galactic War began without ceremony. The Reborn Council fought with fury and desperation, their fleets vast but disorganized. The Solgard fought with precision, every ship a blade, every soldier a weapon. Planets burned again. The same stars that had seen peace now watched as entire systems died. It was not like the first war, swift and one-sided. This one was slower, uglier. The galaxy had learned to fight back. But humanity had learned to end. Admiral Kara Harlow, granddaughter of the legendary admiral, led the final campaign. Her voice echoed through the fleetnet as the Solgard prepared their final strike on the Reborn's hidden capital. Our ancestors brought peace through strength. They built the silence we live in today. The galaxy has forgotten what happens when humanity is betrayed. Tonight, they will remember. Her fleet descended. The sky turned white. The rebellion ended. When the war was done, the stars were quiet again. Grand Marshal Voss died a year later, her final words broadcast across the Empire. Peace is not a gift. It is the price we pay for survival, and we have paid it in full. Her body was laid to rest on the moon, beneath the monument of the Peacekeepers, a tall white spire that reached toward the endless sky. At its base, the words were carved in steel. We kept the peace. When peace was broken, we kept the stars. And so the galaxy lived on in silence. Ships moved through space under the watchful eyes of Solgard patrols. Worlds obeyed. Empires rebuilt themselves under human oversight. No one dared to speak of rebellion again. But sometimes, when travelers passed the old battlefields, when they saw the shattered hulls still floating among the stars, they whispered to one another. Once humanity came to bring peace, now they are peace itself. And in the cold, endless dark, the universe remembered. The Peacekeepers had become gods, and the galaxy, once proud and wild, now slept under their shadow. Because peace was no longer a dream. It was a warning.